Go ahead and get started. For those of you that are new to the Zoom call, my name is Sean Wolin. I'm a local mortgage banker, and I do these every Monday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time or Arizona time or whatever you want to call that, Mountain Standard Time, depending on when everyone moves clocks. Arizona doesn't, so that makes us a little unique. But welcome to the Wolin Mortgage Team Monday Morning Mortgage Update. Today we're going to go over a lot. It's Fed Week. So I'm going to jump right into the PowerPoint presentation that I have here. First off, I want to thank our team players out there. So thank you so much to Pioneer Title. Angie Sanis, just most likely on this call. Thank you for everything that you do for our team. I know that refinances are basically gone, so I can't point those in your direction, but thank you for everything else you do as a valued partner.
You know what, Sean, let's remind everyone we've got Cromford Report this Thursday. So if anyone would like to reach out,
that's going to be a really good one. Can you put that link into the chat so people can copy that?
Yes, and they can reach out to Christy and I also too for the link.
Yes, please do, because that's going to be really, really interesting, guys. As the data comes out on these markets, we're going to really see what truly is happening. Yes, there's a lot of price reductions out there, and a lot of buyers think that the market's dropping. We are still seeing, well, it's a hodgepodge out there, so. We'll take a close look at the data there. So thank you for that, Angie. And let's go ahead and jump in. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Bear with me one moment as I do so. All right. Here we go from the beginning. So today's Monday morning mortgage update. And today's agenda, what I want to go over is inflation, like what the heck happened last week. If you were on the call last week, everyone was expecting one thing and then another thing happened. So we want to dissect that to see what's going on there. I'm going to give you a full interest rate update. I'm going to take you live online to show you kind of what the candlestick charts are doing and what to expect as we move on through the week with the Feds. And that's the big announcement, 75 basis points, which is going to be really interesting to see. And then I'm going to go over, there's some confusion on the type of buy downs that are out there. There's a 3-2-1 buy down, there's a 2-1 buy down, there's a 1 buy down, or there's a permanent buy down. So I'm going to go over what that looks like, really what they cost and what the pros and cons are. So every week we're going to go over a new mortgage program to help you guys understand kind of what the heck is happening out there with what's popular. And now we're going to jump right in. So last week, inflation was supposed to come in at negative 0.10. And surprise, surprise, it came in at a positive 0.10 and the markets went absolutely berserk. I mean, they went crazy. The stock market was down 1,300 points. Everyone thought we were at a peak in inflation, and it just went completely the opposite direction. So it was absolutely stunning, kind of what happened there, it was shocking, to be perfectly candid. And it was one of those things that everyone got it wrong. I mean, literally everybody got it wrong. So I don't know what to say to everyone that's out there, but inflation is one of those things that once it's become sticky, it's hard to go the opposite direction. So I'm going to show you a little bit more about what the inflation history is, what we're going to expect, what the Feds are doing, and how can they help mortgage rates. So I'm going to share my screen again one more second here, and I'm going to take you right back into that. I don't know why I decided not to share, but here's where we are right now. This is the breakdown of inflation over the last year. Now, keep in mind, the way that our government tracks inflation is a month-over-month average. So if you look back August 2021, it was 0.3, okay? We're replacing that with a 0.1, so inflation should come down, which it did a tick. But look at all these high numbers right here. October through March of last year were really high numbers for inflation. So as we go, we're going to be replacing these high numbers with low numbers, which will bring the overall inflation numbers down. Now, if you look at the actual inflation, if you separate every single item of consumer price index, like what the actual items are that are high inflation numbers, housing, rents, food, gas, a lot of those are extremely high. I'm talking 20 to 40% year-over-year increase. That's really the main drivers of it. A lot of the other items are in the 15 to 20%. Some is actually going negative. So it's hard to say what the actual items are that are causing these numbers of inflation, because technically that could be manipulated by just not counting some items. But this is the year over year. It's really interesting because keep in mind, we're going to be replacing whatever next month's figure is with September, which is almost a 0.5%, 0.4. So we should see inflation come down over the next few months. Should. Hopefully there won't be anything that's going to scare us out there. Here's a history of inflation so we can kind of see why it's so shocking. We went from an average of 1.5 to 2.25 between 0.7 and 2.3 inflation over the last 10 years, 8 years, to boom, 7 and 8.3. So anytime you see a massive spike like that, you're going to see massive changes in everything. Now, keep in mind, mortgage rates are driven by inflation. So think about it this way. A mortgage bond is a long-term investment, and the rate of inflation will determine whether that investment will make money or lose money. So if you're investing in a 30-year yield at 4%, but inflation's at 8%, you're basically losing 4% on that investment. Follow me on that? So as inflation goes up, mortgage rates have to go up so that it's attractive. The bond is attractive to investors. So that's why when inflation comes up and it spikes, mortgage rates go through the roof. I'm going to take you now through the online breakdown of what's happening currently with mortgage rates. So we're now down 28 basis points. Okay, that's not a good day. But what I want to show you is there is hope around the corner. This is the candlestick chart for mortgage-backed securities. This is a strong Fibonacci level. So mortgage-backed securities have been dropping and getting worse, which means rates go up, and we've bounced on this line right here.
We're not seeing your screen.
Oh, you're not seeing that? I'm sorry. Thank you for letting me know. Let me go back here.
Thank you, Carla.
All right, there you go. Sorry about that, guys. So mortgage-backed securities have dropped on the mortgage-backed securities, which means rates go up, and we've stopped on this Fibonacci level right here. So I'm hoping, we are all hoping that we hold our line, hold the line, right? Like, what's that movie with Mel Gibson? Braveheart, hold the line. Because if it drops below this, we could have a lot more to fall. Now, we also want to watch the 10-year to see what's happening there. And we are at a very, very important level here as well. Remember, these Fibonacci levels, they act like floors of support or ceilings. If we could bounce off of that, that'd be very beneficial, because look at this trend line. It is disturbing. Remember, the long-term bonds, for the most part, follow the 10-year. And this drive upward is not a good sign for mortgage rates. So if we can bounce off of this, we'll be in really good shape. But if we go above this, there's just more room to go. I mean, this line right here, guys, it's a definitive line upward, this trend. It's very, very definitive. So I'm hoping we can break this. Otherwise, rates will continue to go up. Now, the Feds are going to have a massive impact on our interest rates this week. And they speak on Wednesday, and then they have their conference. Here's what's happening currently in mortgage rates, guys. I mean, this spike is never fun to see, but look at the average 30-year fixed. Now, keep in mind, these are raw rates. So points like income to the lender is not included in this. So this is with the lender making nothing. So the average rate, 6.35 on a 30-year fixed. I mean, yeah, just bite your nails. It's kind of hard to swallow that pill. But 15-year fixed, we're still in the 5s. 30-year, look at the ARMs though. The ARMs are very similar to the 30-year fixed because the yield curve is almost, it's inversing. It's going back and forth. We're being inversed. That's not a good sign for ARMs either. So FHA is always a little bit better, and so is VA. So they're still in the 5s, or potentially in the 5s there. So interest rates are higher. What can we expect moving forward? It's going to be really interesting, but let's jump back into my presentation here. So hold on 1 second. Go back to sharing my screen. All right, so there's the average today on interest rates. And we already looked at the markets. It's Fed week. So I want to kind of go over what the Feds do when they raise the interest rates, because a lot of people think, and if you've been on this call before, you've heard this probably like a broken record. When the Fed funds raise their rates, they're raising the Fed funds rate. That's the rate at which banks borrow from the Fed window on a 24-hour basis. It is not long-term money. It is very, very short-term money. Yes, it does have an impact on home equity lines of credit that are tied to the prime rate, which is tied to the Fed rate. But mortgage bonds are not tied to the Fed funds rate. Mortgage rates are not tied to the Fed funds rate. So this is what happened the last time the Fed funds rate was increased by 75 basis points. If you look right here, the inflation numbers came out, it was terrible. And the Feds acted aggressively and they raised 75 basis points right here. They raised the Fed funds rate by 75 basis points to offset inflation. The markets like this. The markets thought, okay, great. They're taking an aggressive stance to stop inflation, and mortgage bonds got better and rates got lower. So when the Fed funds rate act, it doesn't necessarily mean that mortgage rates will go up as well. Mortgage rates should come down because they're being aggressive to slow down inflation. So mortgage bonds had a very good day and rates got better. Mortgage bonds have a good day, rates get better. So if you look at this, it was a nice rally that we had. And then we had some scary inflation news and then more inflation news coming down. So we're going to get another Fed move, which is going to hopefully have this same impact for us. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we will see mortgage rates get better. I'm really hoping it does. We're all praying it does. But in the meantime, what do we do to those buyers that are currently looking for rates of yesterday, today? So seller buy downs and temporary buy downs are very attractive right now, but there's a couple different versions. So a seller buy down can come in two ways, a permanent or a temporary. A permanent buy down is they are paying whatever it costs to buy the rate down permanently to a lower rate. That upfront cost is paid for by the sellers. The buyers can do it as well. They can pay for it as well. But typically we're asking the sellers in today's market to do that. Where a temporary is only buying the rate down for a graduated period of it's either a 3-2-1 buy down, a 2-1 buy down, or a 1 buy down. Meaning the first year the rate is 3% below the current rate, and then it goes to the second year is 2% below, the third year is 1% below, and then the next year is the normal rate. So as an example, if you did a 3-2-1 buy down today, if the rate's 6.125, your first year, the rate would be 3.125. The second year would be 4.125. The third year, it would be 5.125, and then it would go back to normal the following year at the 6.125. Now, the main difference I want you guys to understand this is the temporary buy down, the cost to do that is exactly equal to the savings that you get by buying the rate down. So if that savings is going to be $10,800 in payments over that 3-year period, that's how much the seller has to pay. So it's an apples to apples cost. So it's really paying your payment. They're making your payments for you for a little bit for the first 3 years. The sellers are. That's what a temporary buy down does. So it's really a good program for somebody that knows that they're going to be potentially refinancing in the future, or they're going to be selling in a couple of years, and etc. So let's have a look at what that looks like. This is a temporary buy down.
Sean?
Yes.
What do you have to qualify them at, the end rate or the start rate when you're doing that?
I'm so glad you asked that. So on a permanent buy down, you always qualify at whatever the permanent rate is. So if you have a customer that is really on the edge of qualifying, you can help them qualify by doing a rate buy down, a permanent buy down. Now, the temporary buy down, because that payment's going to go up in the future, we as a lender have to qualify them at the big higher rate. So very, very good question. Permanent buy down, you use the permanent rate, which is bought down permanently to the lower rate. You use that to qualify. Temporary, you use the higher rate to qualify. You just get a lower introductory payment for the first 3, 2, or 1 years.
Thank you.
Great question. So here's a conventional 30-year, and forgive me, this was done showing a little bit lower rate. Rates are higher now, so just don't look at that right now. But this shows what it will look like. Down payment 5%, interest rate 6 1/8. On the temporary, this is a 2-1 buy down. The first year it's 4.125, then it's 5.125, and then it's going to go to 6.125. The payments, $2,300, $2,586, and $2,886 on the permanent. The savings per month is pretty significant, $584 a month, $299. So the total savings is $10,606, and this is what the sellers have to pay as well. So the temporary cost is equal to the savings. So to calculate it, it's a little complicated. We need to figure out the savings per year and then kind of back it in. But this is a great example of what it would look like on a temporary buy down. Now, compare and contrast that to a permanent buy down. The permanent buy down is a little different, and this is a different type of a presentation. So I do apologize for it being a little different. But when you look at this is a without the buy down, if you did a price reduction, and then if you did the rate reduction, what it would look like. So if you bought down the rate, it would be, let's go back, it would be 5.125, and that cost was about equal, it's about $9,500 to the seller to get that cost to 1%, okay? The payment savings isn't as much as the 3-2-1 buy down up front, but it's $299.84 per month savings compared to the price reduction at a lower price. But it's $299 compared to the actual normal full price offer. So $299 a month savings here. This column is interesting. This is what you would have to lower the price on the purchase to get to the same payment. You would have to lower it to $448,000 from the $500. So permanently, you'd save $300 a month compared to a full price offer. Now let's look at what it would be like the buy down permanently versus a temporary buy down over the life of the loan. This is where it really gets interesting. This is the number I want you to look at. The savings over a 30-year period is $97,400 of savings by doing a permanent buy down compared to a temporary buy down. So that is a very interesting number. So I want to talk to you about that. I'm going to stop sharing just for a second here. The permanent buy down is really for that person who doesn't think they're going to be doing anything with the rate for a long time. They're going to stay in that house for a long time. They want to see a more long-term savings, okay? The temporary buy down is for something that's very short-term. Now, all of us in this market that are studying interest rates, studying inflation, we all believe that with the recession looming, that we will see better days ahead of us as far as interest rates go. We're now looking at late this year to early next year to see the rates actually starting to come down again. So if our buyers are looking to pay for it themselves, I do not recommend them doing that. As far as the buy down, if the sellers are willing to just give away the farm, great, take it, go for the buy down. But they may end up refinancing a year or two out. So if the sellers are willing to give it, if it really helps them qualify to get into that home, then great, do it. An example is we just had a customer close last month that their whole budget was set up at 4% when we did the pre-qualification. Rates went up and they wanted that same price range. The only way to do that and for them to feel comfortable based on their budget, and they were very strict with their budget, is to get a rate of 4%. So we did a buy down to get them there. It made them sleep better at night. It made them fit their budget. It was just the way they wanted to do it. So everyone has their own specific rules that they want to follow with how they want their mortgage to look every month, based on their budget, based on how, what makes them sleep better at night is really the best way to judge which options you want to choose from. But we can put these presentations together and go over them with them line by line, do some comparisons to see if it makes sense or not.
Sean, I have
Obviously,
a question. If
yes.
If a seller does a permanent buy down for the buyer and rates go down in a year and the buyer decides, hey, I'm going to refinance to this lower rate, do they get credit for all that money that's been prepaid basically on the interest rate? Does that get rolled into their new loan, like reduce their loan amount or anything?
No, it does not. That money is lost. So
okay.
It's almost, it's paid for, it's used, it's gone.
That's the game.
That's the game. Exactly.
Well,
that's why we
benefit.
have to figure out if it makes sense or not.
Yeah, that's the benefit to the lender, and I see that. I just wanted to know because need to know.
Yeah, the cost actually goes to the yield difference on the rate. So you benefit for the lower rate. So when we look at that to see if it makes sense, we have to look at it over a 24-month, 12, 24-month, and 36-month period. And that's why if we're asking the buyers to pay for it themselves, that's why I say don't do it, because they'll waste their money if we're going to have a refinance right around the corner. But if the sellers are willing to do it, and really the buyers want that house, but they can't qualify at the higher rate, but they do at the lower rate, let's just make a business decision to say, let's accept that money and move forward. And if you look at what the payment savings is with a price reduction versus a rate buy down, the payment savings is quite a bit more with the rate buy down. So we have to look at that side by side to see what makes sense for each borrower, because it's going to be different for everybody. We really need, and that's where this side-by-side comparison, talking that out with the buyers, is very important. We just don't want to throw them into this. We want to make sure it makes sense.
Sean,
a good question. Yeah.
What you were just talking about, that was for the permanent rate buy down, not for the 2-1, correct? Because the 2-1, if you refi, you get a credit if you were to refi. That
is correct. The permanent buy down, the money is lost. Temporary, depending on the loan product, the temporary buy down is a little bit different. But yes, absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that. Permanent buy down, it's permanent. Money's gone. You paid for the lower rate. If you refinance, you lose that. Is that a blowback from COVID money being flooded into the market? Carla, you talking about inflation there?
Yeah, yes. That was way back.
Yeah. Yeah, the amount of money that's put into our market. So I'm just going through the chat real fast. The amount of money that was put into the markets, the salary increases that we saw. I mean, we all saw it. Like Jack in the Box was paying $20 an hour in bonuses for people to go to work. The CEO of Jack in the Box doesn't make less money. So guess what? All the costs go up. When anytime you have raise of income, excuse me, that money's passed on to the consumer. Excuse me. So anytime you see wage increases like we have, which has been very significant, that's part of the problem with inflation. That's actually the scariest inflation, is wage increases and wage inflation, because it makes everything go up. Anytime you see the cost of employment go up, the owners of those companies aren't going to just, okay, say I'm going to lose money now. Everything's very, very, very fine-tuned with these companies as far as what their earnings are versus losses. So they just have to bump up the cost of everything. So now, In-N-Out Burger meal, instead of being $6, it's now $9. It's just the way it works. So all the money in the markets, all of the income inflation, all of it is a problem. And I'm really hoping that slows down. It will be harder in the economy. A recession is always a difficult time for everyone in the nation. The Feds say they're going to try to make a soft landing. We'll see what that really is. But it's going to be tough. You will see higher unemployment. It's just the way it works. It's just the way it is. So with the recession, you're going to see a lot of people moving around. Just this month, we have a couple people that are losing their jobs here locally, and they're moving out of state. So that does create, it's sad to say this, it does create a sale, and it does create opportunity for you to do your jobs. So that does create movement in the markets. but it's not a positive one, if that makes sense. It's sad for the people, but it does cause you to have to go out there and have more listings. Hopefully the buyers will follow, but that's the unnecessary part of a recession, is people having to lose their jobs and move around. Yes, there could be lots of stuff on that. So I don't think a buyer should buy down their rate right now on a permanent buy down if they're paying for it themselves. So we can talk about that individually. If it makes the deal work, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to afford it, great, let's do it. So yeah, it really does depend on each and every person's individual circumstances. So the good news is, guys, the good news is we should see lower rates into next year, because right now it is rough. I mean, buyers are just waiting. And you guys, I have a lot of people on the sidelines that are just waiting to see what happens through this next 3 to 4 months. So let's keep our fingers crossed, say a little prayer, and hope that rates do come down. Inflation does get in check, because what we don't want to see is what happened back in the 70s, where Volcker increased the Fed funds rate in a ridiculous fashion and inflation continued. Inflation continued up. It went from average rate to be like 7 and 8%. It went up to 18%. We do not want that to happen. So I really do hope that the feds know what they're doing, and they take appropriate action, and then we really kind of slow down the roll with the spending. So let's see what happens. But in the meantime, there are a lot of programs out there to help. Unfortunately, ARMs aren't as good as they could be. Usually on a high interest rate environment, ARMs are a safety net to jump into. So maybe that'll come back as well. But yeah, it's gonna be tough out there. But guys, we will see more activity. As you know, the amount of listings is higher. Hopefully that'll stay balanced and we won't go too crazy on the inventory, because that's where we could run into issues with people being forced to sell and forced to lower their price because of moves. And that's where you see declines in markets. So let's hope that it comes, that the inventory normalizes. And we're kind of in that phase now. But any questions? I'm going to stay on for a while. So if you have any personal questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And why do you think ARMs aren't much lower than regular rates? And that's a good question. If you want, I can show you. So when the yields are greater on a short term than a long term, that's called an inverted yield curve. So right now, if you look at a short term bond versus a long term bond, typically as an investor, you make more money on long term when you invest in that, like a CD, for example. If you do a 2-year CD, you may get a 2.5 yield, where if you do a 10-year, you may get a 5% yield. Well, right now, the short term is higher than the long term. So those adjustable rate mortgages are based on shorter term bonds, and that's why they're kind of the same right now. Because the short term is the same or equal to the long term. If you look at the yields on the different bonds on the short term versus long term, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. And I can go over that in detail if you want. Any other questions? That was a good question.
Really glad we have you, because most of this is going over my head. So I'm throwing my clients at you, dude.
And your customers will ask sometimes, or they'll say something wrong, like, I want to buy before the feds raise the rates. That may not be the best approach, because the feds don't have an impact on mortgage rates. So you'll be able to say, hey, you know what I learned is that the Fed funds rate, what they're doing is trying to lower inflation, and lower inflation means lower mortgage rates. So it may actually be better in a few weeks. It'll just give you that type of talking point. And when people do talk about buy downs, now you'll know a little bit more about temporary versus permanent.
The more we hear it, the more it'll sink into my brain anyways. But I appreciate you, especially like I have that new contract. So I know you'll keep an eye on the market, and interest rates. So you'll lock them in at the right time. I really appreciate that.
Yes, exactly. So a lot of mortgage lenders, they will talk about, yeah, we have the best rates right now, or I can beat them by X amount of points, today. And it may be very fractional because Fannie and Freddie set all the rates for conventional and FHA and Fannie or Ginnie or VA, etc. And the difference is just the overhead for the company. But if I can tell you, no, don't lock today like that other guy was going to, we're going to see a little bit better rates in the next week because we've hit that Fibonacci level and we're bouncing off of it. Like that's the conversation the customers need to hear. Because a lot of times I can lock in a better rate, even if I was higher at the beginning when they were shopping. So, because I know when to do that. So very good observation there. All right, guys, well, I'm gonna stay on for a while. If you do have any questions, feel free to stay on and ask me direct. If not, you guys are free to go apart your week or about your week. And if there's anything you need, let me know. And again, there's some topics that were given to me online through social media. So I'm going to be addressing those in next Mondays. There's questions on foreclosures, the CFHA programs. There's more questions on buy downs that are more specific that I'm going to do individually. But any questions you have, anything you want to hear, send me a message and I will address those in the next live Zoom call.
Thanks, Sean. Great meeting.
You got it, guys. Have a great week. And if you need anything, I'm always here for you.
Thanks, Sean.
You got it, guys.
Hey, Sean, I got one question for you.
Sure.
What do you think interest rates are going to kind of be at by end of year? Do you think they're going to come back down a little bit, or you think they're going to stay pretty even from where things are right now?
I think my gut is we may see a little worse before we see better. I think we're going to see a head fake where the Fed makes a move and we get a little bit better, and it may go back to where we're at now or a little bit higher until we get the next inflation report, which will bring that down. And I think after the September inflation report comes out, I think we may start to see the rates get a little bit better at that point.
Like you see them cutting
what's
rates
that?
at the Fed? You see them like cutting back rates?
The Feds, no. I think the Feds will continue to raise rates throughout the year. I think they're going to do it a couple more times. But the mortgage rates, because of inflation coming down, the mortgage rates should get better as they do that. So I think beginning of the year, we'll see. My hope is to see fives by late winter. Let's just say
And
that. That's
you
my
see
hope.
that for
That's my gut. That's my gut.
For like a 30-year fixed?
Correct. That's kind of where my gut feels based on what I see, the numbers on inflation and how that impacts the rates. But it's hard to say. I mean, we could get, a curveball thrown at us.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw what happened when Ukraine and the Ukraine war happened. I mean, we could get something, just an uppercut, that causes rates to drop dramatically or raise or increase dramatically. But if everything goes for status quo, because we are recessionary in nature as far as our market right now, we should see lower rates. And because they're aggressively attacking inflation, we should see inflation come down. Based on the charts that I showed you, we're going to be having low inflation numbers replacing high inflation numbers. So rates should come down. Again, we could get a curveball, and that would suck. But that's what I'm expecting. That's what most people in the mortgage industry are expecting, but it's hard to say what is going to come at you from left field, so we'll just keep an eye on it.
Gotcha. Cool. Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right, guys, well, have a wonderful week. I'm always available, and if you have any questions, message me, email me, text me. And we'll see you next Monday. Again, I'll stay on the call for a little bit longer and address any questions that you guys may have.